Hey, what's going on? Brian Page back here again, and I'm doing a recording on the skeletal system. So there's a few things I'm going to do. First, I'm going to hold up this piece of paper. Kind of says obviously my name, the date. It's June 27th, 2021, and the different things we're going to do today as far as the topics covered. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the skeletal system in general and the components of the skeletal system. Secondly, I'm going to talk about different types of bones, in particular, the types of bones as they relate to the shape and the size of the bone. Next, I'm going to actually use my little guy here. I call him Johnny Bones to go through the different bone structures and show you that. And then I'm going to talk about a clinical application. So, an area of my future practice in which the skeletal system will apply. So, I'm going to go over those four components. So, let's get started here. So, the skeletal system, what is it? Well, the skeletal system, the organ of the skeletal system is the bones. So, there's actually 206 bones in the human body. And the skeletal system also consists of the ligaments, the different connective tissue that holds the bones together, in addition to the joints and the cartilage that consist of the skeletal system. So, what kind of type of bones are there? So, there's seven different types of bones depending on the size and the shape of the bone. So, the first type is the long bone. So an example of the long bone is the humerus. So it's longer than it is wide. Um, the second type of bone is short bone. So an example is the carpal of the hand. So it's as long as it is wide. So a third type of bone is a flat bone. So examples like in the skull. So it's flat, consists of the surrounding of the skull. The fourth type of bone is called a sutural bone. So there's different lines that hold the different cranial bones together called sutures, and there's actually little bones in between there um, that are called sutural bones. So that's the fourth type. The fifth type of bone that's in the skeletal system is irregular bone. So, an example of this is the vertebrae, which is kind of an irregular shape. It's not long, it's not short, etc. So, sixth type of bone is the pneumonized bone. So, that's a bone that contains holes or contains air pockets so a person can breathe, etc. So the ethmoid bone is an example of a pneumonized bone. There's holes in it. An example, in addition to the internal area of the nasal passage. So the final type of bone is sinusoid bone, and that's like the patella. It's a circular bone, and those are the seven type of bones. So now we're going to go through and I'm going to go from head to toe, talk about my friend Johnny Bones and the different bones of the skeletal system. So let's get started. If you could see it with the cranium here. The frontal part is called the frontal bone. So this suture that goes this way is the coronal suture. And then the bone up here is the parietal bone on both sides. On the side here is the temporal bone. And on the back here is the occipital bone. So this suture that goes like this is the lambdoid suture. The suture on the side that goes here is the squamous suture. And then the suture in the middle here going down horizontally is the sagittal suture. And I already said the coronal suture. So those are the bones of the cranium. Just talk about a little bit more is this is obviously the nasal bone up here. These are the orbital bones here. Um, this is the maxilla, and within the orbital bone, there's a perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone. This is the mandible, so like the jaw. This is the TMJ, so that's the temporomandible joint here. There's the mastoid bone, and then the styloid process that hangs off on the bottom here, this little thing. The occipital protuberance, etc. The zygomatic bone, so that's the cheekbone here. And this is the zygomatic arch. So this is the zygomatic process of the temporal bone and the temporal process of the zygomatic bone that makes up the zygomatic arch. What else am I missing? The external meatus, or where the ear kind of goes in, is there. Take this skull off. Boom. And actually on the side here you could see where the sphenoid bone starts, and it actually spans the area of the skull. It kind of looks like a bat, so that's the sphenoid bone. So the greater wing and the lesser wing. In the middle there, there's a little thing that looks like a saddle. That's called the sella tercera, and that's where actually the pituitary gland kind of sits within the skull. There's different fossa, so that's the anterior fossa, the middle fossa, and the posterior fossa, where the brain kind of sits in. Up here in the frontal area, you could see the ethmoid bone. That's in the front there, and the ethmoid bone consists of the cribriform plates on the side, and the middle, the crystal galali. That's a cribriform bone right up here in the front. I'm gonna put the skull back on here. Then we'll talk about the clavicle bone right here, and then the scapula is back here. This is the humerus, this bone right here, the long bone. The radius, which is by the thumb here. The ulna, which is there. We'll talk about the cervical, the spine here. The top 7 are the cervical vertebrae. The first one is called Atlas because it holds up the world like kind of Atlas does. Second one is called Axis because it helps to rotate the head. And then there's the thoracic region. There's 12 thoracic vertebrae. There's the lumbar vertebrae. There's 5 of those. And then there's the sacrum, which is here. There's 5 fused together bones. And there's coccyx, which is the tailbone, which you can see here. Right here in the middle, this is the sternum. There's a few different parts. The mandibuum is on the top. This is the body of the sternum, and this is the xiphoid process, which is in the middle here. There's 12 ribs total. The first 7 ribs are the true ribs because they connect to the sternum. The last 8 through 12 are false ribs because they don't connect directly to the sternum. Actually, the bottom 2 ribs are floating ribs right here because they don't connect directly. This is the pelvis. There's several different areas of the pelvis. Obviously, this is the hip bone or ilium. There's the pubis here in the middle, and in the ilium, the ischium here. The antebrachium, which is where the femur attached. So the femur is the longest bone in the human body. It's right here. This is the patella, or the knee bone. that little sinusoid bone. This is the tibia, which is right here. The fibula, which is the smaller one here. And then we have the tarsals, the metatarsals, and the phalanges here. Um, the heel bone is actually the calcaneus. So as far as the tarsal bones, there's several here. It's hard for me to hold it up here, but there's the talus, which is up here, the navicular bone, and then the cuboid bone is over here, and then we have the lateral cuneiform bone, we have the intermediate cuneiform bone, and then we have the medial cuneiform bone, and they're the same on both sides here. Talking about, I don't think I talked about the hands here, but there's the carpals, and then the metacarpals, and the phalanges down here. So as far as the carpals, there's 8 different carpals here. We have the scaphoid bone, the lunate bone, the tricunate bone, the pistiform bone. Down here we have the trapezium bone, the trapezoid bone, the capitate, and the hamate. Those are the carpals. And then the thumb is called the pollex. Actually, the big toe is called the hallux. Those are the different bones there. So I believe I covered all of the bones of the body. I don't think I missed any of them. But yeah, thanks, Johnny. You've been a great participant. I'm going to put you back on your stand here. Put you on the side. All right, so last but not least, before I run out of time here, talk about a clinical application of the skeletal system. So as a reminder, I'm going to be a licensed, well, I am a licensed clinical psychologist, but I'm going to be a prescribing psychologist pretty soon. And many of the psychotropic medications we prescribe inadvertently impact the skeletal system. For example, some of the antipsychotics, so one's called risperidone or Risperdal. It actually raises prolactin levels, so the pituitary gland of the endocrine system releases prolactin, which actually has an impact on the bone. So increased prolactin levels for a long period of time leads to osteopenia and also osteoporosis eventually. So the bones get brittle or weaker. So that's something you have to look for as far as a patient who's chronically on antipsychotics, is to kind of look at the skeletal system and how it could impact different things as far as the endocrine system and the bones being brittle. So I appreciate you giving me the time today. That's all the areas we covered. We talked about what the skeletal system was. I went through the 7 different types of bones, the long bone, the short bone, flat bone, sutural bone, irregular bone, pneumonized bone, and then the last but not least, sinusoid bone. And then we talked about the different bones in our model Johnny Bones here. And then I talked about the clinical application. So until next time, you have a great day. Thanks.